At 0630 on February 20th, 1945, 4 Marines were hunched in a narrow Japanese trench on Iwo Jima when 2 grenades dropped into the ash at their feet. The trench was barely shoulder wide. Black sand, rough rock walls, nowhere to run. They'd just finished blasting 11 Japanese out of foxholes and side tunnels. Guns still smoked. Ears still rang. Now 2 dark, round shapes bounced once in front of them and stopped. Private First Class Jacklyn Harold Lucas saw them first. He had less than 2 seconds. In a space that tight, those grenades would rip all 4 of them apart. No room to dive away. No time to throw them clear. He shouted one word, "Grenade!" and moved. He kicked one grenade deeper into the loose ash and swept the other under his body as he hurled himself down on top of both. The blasts slammed him into the trench wall. Steel and sand tore through his right arm, chest, neck, both thighs. The concussion blew the breath out of him and turned the trench into a gray fog of dust and blood. The 3 Marines behind him were knocked flat, peppered with fragments, but alive. The kid who'd just covered 2 live grenades lay in the bottom of the trench, uniform shredded, blood soaking into the ash. Somehow, he was still breathing. An hour earlier, his squad leader had called his plan suicide. For Jack Lucas, that just meant he was finally where he belonged. Jack shouldn't have been anywhere near Iwo Jima. He was born in 1928, in Plymouth, North Carolina. His father died when he was 10. His mother worked long hours to keep the family afloat. Jack grew into a compact, strong teenager, 5'6", thick-necked, always in a fight or on a ball field. After Pearl Harbor, the newsreels of Marines in the Pacific hit him like a drug. They wanted men of 18. He was 14. He forged his mother's name on a consent form, altered his birthday to E, and walked into a Marine recruiting office. The sergeant saw a solid kid with a serious stare, glanced at the paperwork, and decided not to ask too many questions. Parris Island did the rest. He was the youngest in his platoon. The drill instructors called him Junior until he started out shooting and out-hauling men 4 years older. On the machine gun range, he hauled the Browning like it was nothing. On the rifle range, the M1 seemed made for him. The Corps didn't know he was 14. It just knew he was good. So it did what the system did with underage Marines, kept him stateside. By 1944, Lucas was a heavy weapons instructor at Camp Lejeune, teaching other Marines how to fire machine guns and throw grenades while they shipped out to Tarawa, Saipan, Peleliu. He hadn't lied his way into Polish floors. He wanted a real fight. In early 1945, when the 5th Marine Division was loading for a new operation in the Central Pacific, Jack walked away from Lejeune and headed west. He rode trains, hitched rides, and made it to the docks in San Diego, where he found the attack transport USS Deuel taking on gear and rifle companies from the 26th Marines. He slipped aboard and hid among sea bags in the dark bowels of the ship. For 3 days at sea, he lived like a ghost, stealing sea rations, drinking from unlocked scuttles, moving only when the holds were empty. When a messman finally dragged him into the light and dropped him in front of the battalion staff, the officers had a choice: court-martial the kid and ship him back, or quietly assign one more rifleman to a division about to hit one of the nastiest islands on the map. "You really want this that bad?" the battalion commander asked. "Yes, sir." "Fine. You're in C Company now. If you panic and get my men killed, I'll have you sent back in chains." Jack grinned. Weeks later, the Deuel dropped its LCVPs into a gray sea off a black island, Iwo Jima. On February 19th, Lucas came ashore in the 3rd wave on Red Beach 1. The sand was like walking on ball bearings over talc. Every step sank. Machine gun fire and mortars raked the beach. Men went down all around him. He and his squad fought their way off the beach and into a landscape of shell holes and broken bunkers. By nightfall, they were a few hundred yards inland, dug into shallow foxholes that wanted to collapse, listening to the cough of Japanese mortars and the rumble of naval guns. On the morning of D-1, Company C, 126, got its next job. Push up a shallow ravine, enter a trench and cave system that had been tearing up the advance, and clear it. A 4-man team from 3rd Platoon would go first. Everyone else would cover and follow. Jack stepped forward. "Kid, you don't have to," one of the older Marines said. "We've been doing this a while." "That's why I'm here," Jack said. They dropped into the trench. Corporal Robert Lucas led, Jack second, 2 more Marines behind. They moved a few yards at a time. Halt. One covered while another checked the next bend. Any side hole or foxhole got a grenade, and a short, violent rush. At the first junction, 2 Japanese soldiers lunged out of a side passage, rifles up. Jack's M1 barked twice. Both went down. A grenade into the hole finished the job. They pushed on. By the time they reached that last widened section, they'd killed at least 11 Japanese in hand-to-hand trench fighting. Then 2 grenades came tumbling out of a side cut and landed almost under their boots. There was no space and no time. Jack saw where they landed and where his friends were. He chose. He shouted, threw himself forward, kicked 1 grenade into the ash, dragged the other under his chest, and took the blast. 3 men lived because one 17-year-old decided that after everything he'd done to get there, he wasn't going to let his buddies die if there was anything he could do about it. Doctors thought he'd last minutes. He lasted decades. Surgeons pulled more than 200 pieces of metal from his body. They patched his lungs, gut, and shattered arm. They never found every fragment. For the rest of his life, bits of grenade and volcanic grit worked their way out of his skin. On October 5, 1945, in the White House, President Harry Truman hung the Medal of Honor around Jack Lucas's neck. At 17, he was the youngest Marine ever to receive it. The citation said he unhesitatingly hurled himself over his comrades upon 1 grenade and pulled the other under him, absorbing the whole blasting force of the explosions. It didn't mention the forged papers at 14, the stowaway trip across the Pacific, or the way older Marines told him his plan was suicide. Asked years later why he did it, Lucas kept his answer simple. "I saw the grenades," he said. "I saw my buddies. I figured I could take it better than they could." On Iwo Jima, in a trench full of smoke and steel, that's exactly what he did.